Good afternoon and welcome to A News. I'm Leila Masimova. Here are the top stories. UN Security Council meets to discuss the war in Ukraine. Pro- and anti-ceasefire protests erupt worldwide as Israel's cabinet nears approval of the deal. China economy beats 2024 forecasts while concerns over a challenging year ahead remain. UN Security Council held a meeting to discuss a challenging situation in Ukraine as the war intensifies.
Following a briefing at the United Nations, emotions were mixed as the situation in Ukraine worsens. UN Under-Secretary General Rosemary DiClero expressed a grave concern over the increase in civilian casualties, especially among children. DiClero condemned Russia's continued attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, calling them reprehensible and aimed at terrorizing civilians. DiCarlo also raised alarming reports of North Korean troops fighting alongside Russian forces, a development that has sparked concerns about the war's further internationalization. South Korea's Ambassador Jong Kwang elaborated, relieving that 2 North Korean soldiers were captured in the Kursk region of Russia, and they were unaware of being deployed for the war. The allegations were strongly denied by Russia, with Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia dismissing them as a part of a large narrative against Russia. He further accused Ukraine of preparing a bloody provocation to blame Russia.
The rumors in Kiev suggest that the regime, together with its UK sponsors, is preparing a large-scale bloody provocation for which Russia will be blamed.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's Ambassador Sergei Kislesta responded to Russia's denials, reaffirming that Ukrainian forces had indeed captured North Korean soldiers in the Kursk region, contradicting Russia's claims.
We all remember how vehemently Russia denied in this chamber any involvement of the DPRK troops in this war against Ukraine. Last week, Ukrainian Defense Forces captured North Korean soldiers in the Kursk region.
As tensions continue, the involvement of North Korean soldiers and the ongoing fighting deepen concerns over the future trajectory of the conflict.
In Montenegro, protesters gathered in the city of Cetinje to express dissatisfaction of the government's handling of the mass shootings that took place on January 1st.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Montenegro's town, Cetinje, to protest the government's response to a mass shooting in the southern city. The shooting took place on New Year's Day when a 45-year-old man opened fire after a bar brawl, which killed 13 people, including 2 children. Now these demonstrators call for authorities to resign for failure to ensure public safety.
Our country has once again shown that it has done nothing to protect its citizens and prevent the suffering of the innocent. No one has taken responsibility for such a tragic crime. That is why we are now asking here, who is responsible? Where are those who are accountable, and why have they been silent for days?
Authorities, however, say the shooting was not planned and was impossible to predict and prevent. Stricter gun laws aimed at curbing illegal weapons have been announced, and police raids confiscated approximately 20 firearms and over 500 rounds of ammunition and explosives from various locations as a response to the shooting.
Denmark plans to expand its air base in Greenland, transforming it into an operational military base to strengthen its presence in the Arctic. The base will host F-35 fighter jets and long-range drones for surveillance and defense. The move follows a $2.1 billion plan approved by Denmark's parliament to enhance military capabilities in the region, including new drones and patrol vessels. This expansion comes amid growing concerns over Greenland's strategic importance. Protests broke out worldwide as people reacted to the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. From Israel to Iran, demonstrators expressed support, skepticism, and called for action as the agreement was set to take effect.
Following the announcement of a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, protests erupted globally as people voiced their reactions. The agreement, reached on January 15th, calls for a 6-week truce, with Israeli forces gradually withdrawing from Gaza and hostages being exchanged for Palestinian prisoners. In Israel, hard right supporters blocked highways, condemning the ceasefire. Around 200 protesters gathered near the Knesset, calling on US and Israeli leaders to defend the land of Israel. Meanwhile, families of Israeli hostages expressed frustration over the delay in ratifying the deal. Activists in New York braved sub-zero temperatures to rally in support of the ceasefire, but also called for the swift return of hostages. In London, protesters in Trafalgar Square expressed cautious optimism, relieved for Gaza, but concerned about the durability of the deal.
We wanted to mark the ceasefire agreement, which obviously we are relieved about, and we are in joy because the people of Gaza are in joy. We're relieved because the people of Gaza are relieved. But at the same time, obviously, we have a lot of apprehension because we know that the news of a ceasefire has been floated around previously, and we hope that this ceasefire is actually a permanent ceasefire and that it carries through.
The situation in Iran took on a different tone as demonstrators in Tehran celebrated the deal, waving Hezbollah, Palestinian and Iranian flags. The crowds cheered, claiming the axis of resistance remains strong and defiant, despite the toll the conflict has taken on Gaza. In Jordan, hundreds gathered in Amman to support the ceasefire. Demonstrators expressed relief, particularly over the humanitarian benefits the ceasefire might bring. As international diplomats work to finalize details, the ceasefire appears set to begin on Sunday, but its sustainability remains in question. Both sides have already resumed exchanges of blame, with Israeli warplanes continuing to strike Gaza even after the deal's announcement, further complicating the fragile peace.
The Israeli cabinet will meet to approve a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Palestinian militant group Hamas for the Gaza Strip and the release of hostages. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office confirmed that a deal has been reached, but delays in voting occur due to the divisions with the government. Approval of the deal is expected soon through the ceasefire start remains uncertain, with meetings scheduled later today or Saturday. The 15-month bloodshed in Gaza and Israel since October 2023 has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands and widespread destruction across Gaza. Let's take a look at the key moments that have shaped the crisis in the Middle East.
A new round of confrontation between Hamas and Israel began on 7 October 2023. When Hamas-led gunmen launched an attack on southern Israel. The assault, which included rampaging through communities, resulted in the death of over 1,200 people and the capture of more than 250 hostages. In retaliation, Israel launched a full-scale military campaign aimed at crushing Hamas. The toll on Palestinians has been catastrophic, with over 46,000 reported dead and many others feared buried under rubble in Gaza. In the early days of the war, Israel responded with airstrikes and a total siege on Gaza. As the conflict escalated, other regional actors such as Lebanon's Hezbollah entered the fray. Hezbollah fired missiles at Israel, stating that the attacks were in support of the Palestinians. This added another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. By mid-October, Israel had begun evacuating Gaza City, home to over 1 million residents, and ordered them to move south, initiating a mass displacement of Gaza's population. On October 21, international aid began flowing into Gaza through the Rafah border, crossing from Egypt. This relief, however, was insufficient to meet the growing humanitarian crisis. For months, international organizations and Western governments have urged Israel to allow more aid into the region. Despite these calls, the situation continued to worsen, with Gaza's infrastructure severely damaged and thousands of civilians trapped in the fighting. By the end of October, Israel had launched a ground offensive in Gaza. The conflict was relentless, and by mid-November, Israel's forces had entered Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, after a siege. As the war raged on, the death toll continued to climb. On November 21, a brief 7-day truce was declared, leading to the release of around half of the hostages. However, the ceasefire quickly collapsed, and fighting resumed on December 1. Throughout December, Israel launched a series of large ground operations in southern Gaza, particularly targeting the city of Khan Yunis. In early January 2024, Israel signaled that it would begin withdrawing from northern Gaza, though the conflict continued in other areas. As the war dragged on, Israel faced mounting international pressure. The International Court of Justice in The Hague issued an order on January 26, 2024, urging Israel to prevent genocide in Gaza, highlighting the global concerns over the scale of the violence. The humanitarian situation remained dire, with over 100 Gazans killed in a deadly shooting incident by Israeli troops in late February. In March, US President Joe Biden announced plans for a floating pier to deliver aid to Gaza, but it remains insufficient, and the crisis continued to worsen throughout the year. In April, the war expanded beyond Gaza when a suspected Israeli airstrike hit an Iranian compound in Damascus, killing several military officers, including a top general. Iran retaliated by launching a series of missile and drone attacks on Israel. By May, a proposal for a ceasefire from Hamas was on the table, but Israel rejected it, leading to further clashes. Despite heavy fighting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicated that the conflict would not end until Hamas no longer controlled Gaza. However, by mid-2024, the war had not shown signs of abating, with heavy bouts of fighting continuing across Gaza, even as Israel issued evacuation orders for more southern cities. As the conflict wore on, regional tensions reached a boiling point. In July, a Hezbollah rocket attack killed 12 children in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, prompting Israel to vow retaliation. Israel claimed to have killed Hamas military chief Mohammed Deif in early July airstrike, though Hamas neither confirmed nor denied his death. Later in the month, on July 31, Israeli forces assassinated Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran alongside his bodyguard. In September of 2024, thousands of booby-trap pager communications devices used by Hezbollah were detonated in Lebanon, injuring not only hundreds of its members, but also many civilians. Israeli officials confirmed its involvement in the operation. On September 28, an Israeli airstrike in Beirut killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. On October 16, Israel killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in a shootout in Rafah, further weakening the group's leadership. At the same time, the humanitarian crisis continued to deepen in the enclave. Gaza faced severe outbreaks of disease, including a confirmed case of polio for the first time in 25 years. This came alongside Israel's parliament voting at the end of October 2024 to ban the UN Relief and Works Agency from the country within 90 days. UN Relief and Works Agency has been a key organization providing humanitarian aid, education, healthcare and social services to Palestinian refugees in the Middle East, including in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria and Jordan. In November, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. On November 27, Israel and Hezbollah reached a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, providing a brief respite in the region. Despite this, the war continued, and by December, US President-elect Donald Trump warned of severe consequences if hostages were not freed before his January 20 inauguration. Finally, on January 15, 2025, after 15 months of intense fighting, negotiators reached a deal for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. This agreement included provisions for halting the violence and exchanging hostages for prisoners, offering a glimmer of hope that the devastating war could soon come to an end.
Wildfires in Southern California have claimed 27 lives since January 7, leaving thousands of homes destroyed and causing widespread devastation. The Eaton fire is now the deadliest in the region's history, with the recovery efforts underway.
The devastating wildfires that have been raging across Southern California since January 7th have claimed at least 27 lives, according to a report released on Thursday by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office. The Palisades fire is responsible for 10 deaths, while the Eaton fire has been linked to 17 fatalities. The wildfires have caused widespread destruction, leaving thousands of homes and structures in ruins. With the Eaton fire now considered the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in Southern California's history, the Palisades fire ranks as the second most severe. The damage has been particularly devastating in the Pacific Palisades area, where approximately 510 hectares have burned, stretching between Santa Monica and Malibu. As smoke filled the skies, around 30,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes. The fires created severe traffic disruptions as people fled the area, with extreme winds further complicating the situation overnight. Officials have estimated that the economic losses from the fires could reach between $250 billion to $275 billion US. While fewer than 100,000 people remain under evacuation orders, some areas are still impacted by the ongoing flames. To aid recovery efforts, a benefit concert called Fire Aid will be held on January 30th. It would feature performances from major artists, including Los Angeles-born native Billie Eilish and her brother Finance, along with Dave Matthews, John Mayer, and Sting. The concert aims to raise funds to support those affected by the catastrophic wildfires.
China's economy has wrapped up 2024 on a stronger note than anticipated. Supported by government stimulus measures, however, looming challenges, including tensions with the United States and weak domestic demand, make the recovery prospects for 2025 uncertain.
China's 2024 economic performance highlights a delicate balancing act. While stimulus measures have provided a boost, the path ahead is fraught with uncertainties, ranging from domestic challenges to global trade tensions. Data released by the National Bureau of Statistics today shows that China's economy grew by 5.0% in 2024, meeting the government's annual target. Fourth quarter growth was the strongest in over a year, reflecting the impact of recent support measures. China's gross domestic product expanded by 1.6% quarter-on-quarter, aligning with forecasts and improving from a revised 1.3% in the previous quarter. These figures highlight the impact of Beijing's stimulus efforts designed to stabilize growth amid ongoing challenges. Yet, the economic landscape remains complex. China continues to struggle with a prolonged property crisis, rising local government debt, and sluggish consumer demand. On the international front, US President-elect Donald Trump, set to return to the White House next week, has proposed steep tariffs on Chinese goods. Analysts warn that these measures could undermine the stability of China's export sector. Despite these challenges, China achieved a trade surplus of $992 billion in last year. However, yuan has faced pressure, dropping to a 16-month low. Analysts attribute this to a strong US dollar, falling Chinese bond yields, and fears of heightened trade barriers. Meanwhile, December's economic data suggests that Beijing's support measures are gaining traction. Industrial output and retail sales both showed solid improvements, aided by government efforts and preparations for the upcoming Lunar New Year.
SpaceX's Starship prototype has failed in space just minutes after launch from Texas. The spacecraft lost contact with mission control, and the company has confirmed the loss of the upper stage. Just minutes after liftoff, SpaceX lost contact with the Starship prototype following separation from its booster. The mission, designed to demonstrate satellite deployment, ended in failure. This marks the second upper stage failure for Starship in under a year, and at least 20 commercial flights were rerouted to avoid potential debris.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
That's all for now, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for more exclusive updates. We'll be back soon.